everyone, this is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. So admittedly, I waited till the very last minute to film this video because I was trying to get one more book finished before the end of this month. And I managed it! Cheers! In the distance. I did manage to finish one last book before the end of the month, and thus the end of the year, bringing my grand total of books read this in 2018 to 62. Huh. Now, admittedly, I didn't start reading really abundantly until around mid this year. Like, I would read regularly, and I would have a constant stream of books in my life. But I was averaging around like 3 sometimes books a month. It wasn't what it is now when I started book blogging. Right when I started posting up reviews and really being involved in the book community, all of a sudden my reading went up to about 6 to 7 books a month. And I think that it hasn't stressed me out, so hey. But yeah, so it's been great reading this year. And if you watched my reading goals video, which I'll link in the description down below, my new goal is going to be 75, and I think that's going to be doable. But I made this video to do a wrap-up of the books I read in December 2018. So let's get started. So the first book I finished in December was actually a book I started in November, which is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. And this I gave 5 stars. I really liked how it was written, and it just seems like a really important book. You know those books that you just have a feeling they might be in classrooms later or really put down as a kind of turning point in history. And I think that this book feels like that to me. But I just really liked how it was written. I'm not normally into first person, but it made sense for the story for it to be and how the plot kind of goes along. So yeah, 5 stars. The next book I read, I also started in November, and that is King's Hold by D.P. Woolliscroft. I had to look down to make sure I got that name right. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's a self-published high fantasy novel, and it's about a kingdom called Eden, which goes from a monarchy to a democracy, and goes through the whole election process. There is magic involved. It's a very well written fantasy. Like, it's solid from start to finish. There is a cast of about 4 or 5 main characters, which it rotates through third person limited point of view, and I really like that style of writing, so this was right up my alley. And seeing all of a sudden people going from monarchy to a democracy and going into campaign mode was just really fun. The next book was a novella, and that was Binti by I'm so sorry, I'm gonna butcher this name, but I need to put it up to my eyes. I should have looked up what the name was before I attempted this, so I'm so sorry. Nandi Nakorafor? Nandi Nakorafor. That's what I'm going with. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong. I'll probably look it up. I should look these things up before I start filming, but what you gonna do? But Binti, I gave 3 stars out of 5. I really wanted this to, I think the reason why I gave it more of a 3 than say like a 4 is more my expectations were a little bit higher for this book. I've heard so much about it, and the premise was so fantastic. It's this gal who, from her village, she gets accepted into this kind of, think of it like Starfleet Academy. No, it's not really Starfleet Academy, but it's this gigantic university that is really prestigious, and she gets accepted in, which is a big deal. However, in her family, people don't really leave. Like, they don't really leave their place, their home. So, and should I even call it a village? Anyway, she gets accepted in, and without telling her family and friends, she leaves to go to this university. Along the way, she meets up with the Meduse, I think they're called, and bad things happen on the way there. But it's about her overcoming that obstacle. And now this book is less than 100 pages, and for the subject matter, it just felt a little bit short. Felt a little bit too short to me. And granted, that may just be like a nitpicky thing. But yes, 3 stars out of 5. It was well written. I liked the plot point. I probably will get to the other books at some. The next book I read was Dumplin' by Julie Murphy, and admittedly, I fully admit I read this because I saw the movie was coming out on Netflix. It did not take me long at all to finish this novel. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. I like that this book wasn't just about her entering a beauty contest, though or a beauty pageant. That is the main focus and kind of the main draw point of the plot. But even a more bigger plot point is her friendship and her friendship and the fights that she gets into with her friend Ellen, her best friend. And I really appreciated that overarching plot point of feeling like you're drifting from your friendships, are that you and your friend are in 2 very separate places at this given time, and how do you overcome that. And I really appreciate that in this novel. There is also a love triangle. It was okay. I personally feel like Mitch got the raw half of that deal, but all the other plot points were fantastic. As I said, the friendship with Ellen and how they change, and how Willadine then gets other friends through other means. And the side characters, by the way, are fantastic. I really kind of wish that there'd be side books to some of the characters that were in here, because they were A+. And then we have The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'm not going to say too much about this. I did a full discussion video, which is I'll put in the description down below. It's a fantastic read. I heavily recommend it. It is part of a series, but it works as a standalone by itself perfectly fine. It's just beautifully written. If you like sociological sci-fi, then it's a great read. Great read. All those are either bits of information I liked, just quotes. The next book I read was The Time Machine / The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, and I gave the combination of these 2 stories a 2 out of 5 stars. The Time Machine is a 1 out of 5 stars for me. On a separate note, I appreciate H.G. Wells and his time machine story and his imagination, but as written, I just couldn't really be into it all that much. So just to kind of give a recap, how the story actually plays out in the book is these people all meet with the time traveler, and he tells them the story of him going back in time. So it's told in third person at first, and then moves to first person as he goes into dialogue. And while that is completely legitimate for a story element, a plot device or whatever, as far as a writing style goes, it's not my favorite. I tend to be really picky when it comes to first person narratives. It's if they're going to be done well, I prefer them not to be done through dialogue tags. If they are, then I tend for them to be like that bard that's in a tavern that tells a story. There are people who do it really well. I just felt like the Time Machine didn't do it very well. And so kudos to H.G. Wells for being imaginative and inventive during that time frame. But for me, looking back on this with modern eyes, it just wasn't a very good story as it was told. Plus, the time traveler himself is kind of this creepy man. Okay, so when he goes into the future, there's 2 races of people, and one can argue that they're one race of people just living in 2 different spots, one the subterranean, one in the above the Earth's core thing. But he runs into these people called the Eloi. Yeah, the Eloi, and they're kind of this childish race of people, and apparently from the time traveler's mind perspective is that he's much more intelligent than they are. But there's one gal that he meets in there, and he's like, her caresses, and she was childlike, and he's bringing up how childlike she is, and mentioning that he sleeps with her in the old style way of her gentle caresses, that they slept together, and it's just creepy to think that he goes forward in time, sees someone who's childlike, who he doesn't think of as intelligent as he is, or able to comprehend things in the way he does, and still has relations. That part was creepy to me throughout. The Invisible Man, however, I thought was a fairly good read. I was about to say fantastic. The first half was really solid, a really good story. So you get the point of view, a third-person limited point of view from the townspeople that about this guy who's just wrapped in these bandages and like this fake nose, and he comes to their town and he's kind of rude and kind of just mean. But they're all trying to figure out his story, and that's like the first half of this novel. And then the second half is, it comes out that he's the Invisible Man, and he like wants to start a reign of terror, all blah 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 blah. The first half I thought was so solid, but then it goes into that plot device once again, or that story element telling once again of telling your story through dialogue. And it happens for several pages when the main guy, the Invisible Man, tells his story to this guy named Kemp. And it's after that first half, it just kind of, it was lackluster for me a little bit. But overall, if I combine their scores, because I gave a 3 out of 5 stars to The Invisible Man, that's a 2 out of 5 stars for this whole thing. But yeah, I think if you read any of H.G. Wells, I would start with The Invisible Man first. I just think it's a better story overall than The Time Machine. Sorry for anyone who likes Time Machine. Just couldn't. So the last book I read was After the Golden Age. Yeah, the last book I read was After the Golden Age by Carrie Vaughn, and this follows the daughter of the superhero Captain Olympus, and also another superhero called Spark. Celia West, who is the daughter of these two, leaves home at a fairly early age. Like, she ends up just being very distant with her parents. She gets out of that kind of superhero life. She still gets kidnapped a lot, even afterwards. She used to get kidnapped a lot when she was a teenager, and then later on in her adulthood, it starts out with her getting kidnapped in this book. And it's a very interesting look at how someone grew up in the shadow of their parents and going forward into that. I heavily enjoyed this. It was 4 out of 5 stars for me. I heavily recommend it to people who love superheroes and also like to see, beyond that just saving the planet kind of deal, going into like backgrounds of family and how that would affect your loved ones. So I do have the second book in this, and I'll have to give that a read at some point. So there was one book out of my 4-book TBR that I did for this month that I didn't get to. Even though I finished 7 books, I still feel a little bit like a failure. Not really. But there's one book I started today, and hopefully I'll be able to finish in the next couple of days, called Beneath the Silent Moon by Tracy Grant. This is the book that was a couple of books deep into a series, but I decided not to even read the first bits of the series and just give this one a try. If I like it, then I'll probably pick up the first couple of books in it, and we'll see how that goes. But this one I plan on reading into the next year, so who knows. There's also one other, besides this, there's one other book that I'm currently reading called To Dream the Black Bane by Richard J. O'Brien. I'm doing this for a blog tour, and so far so good. I'll be linking my site in the description down below. So I'm doing a review of this book into the new year when we do the blog tour. So I'll have that coming up shortly. And that's my December 2018 wrap up. By all means, if you have read any of the books or are interested in any of the books, leave a comment in the description down below to let me know your thoughts, feelings. If you think I'm wrong about the Time Machine, I'll leave my Twitter handle down in the description below. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. May you get lost in a book.